Here's the truth. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, started in Africa over 200,000 years ago. A biological history book that can't be burned or reinterpreted to fit a preferred narrative. Our genetic diversity is a beautiful, branching tree with its roots firmly planted in African soil. From this ancestral homeland, our adventurous forebears began to wander. The big out-of-Africa migration, the one that led to people populating every nook and cranny of this planet, kicked off around 70,000 years ago. That's 70,000 years. Just let that number sink in. That's a lot of sunrises. It's enough time for continents to drift a tiny bit, for ice ages to come and go, and, crucially, for human populations to slowly, gradually, and painstakingly accumulate the vast, stunning genetic diversity we see today. We have fossil records that back this up. We have archaeological sites that map these migrations. It's a cohesive, cross-disciplinary picture painted with mountains of evidence. Now, let's contrast this with the other timeline. You know the one? You won't be able to put it down. According to a very literal, no metaphors allowed reading of the Bible, the entire history of humanity fits into a time frame that's shorter than the recorded history of ancient Egypt. Adam and Eve, our supposed first parents, were apparently created just a few thousand years ago. All the beautiful variety in human appearance, physiology, and genetic makeup. It all supposedly sprang into existence in what amounts to an evolutionary blink of an eye. But wait, it gets even better. Around 4,500 years ago, things went through a major reset. A global flood that conveniently wiped out everyone and everything, except for one 600-year-old man. His wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, 8 people. That's it. All the genetic information required to produce the billions of diverse individuals on Earth, today from the Inuit of the Arctic to the Aboriginal people of Australia, from the Celts of Ireland to the Han Chinese, was supposedly packed into the DNA of just 8 people on a wooden boat. Let's just pause and appreciate the statistical miracle that would require. You'd need a lot more genetic variety than just 8 people in 4,500 years. Then science has shown we accumulated from a population of thousands over 200,000 years. It's not just improbable, it's a mathematical impossibility. The genetic bottleneck would have been so severe that our species would be astonishingly homogeneous. Not to mention riddled with the kind of genetic diseases that plague small, isolated populations. We have more genetic diversity within a single city in Africa than is accounted for in the entire Ark narrative. To believe the biblical timeline, you have to actively ignore the fossil record, dismiss the archaeological evidence, and assume that the fundamental principles of genetics, population biology, and radioactive dating are all part of a massive, coordinated conspiracy to mislead humanity. It's a timeline that doesn't fit the facts, doesn't fit the science, and frankly, doesn't even fit common sense. It's a lovely story for a campfire, but as a scientific hypothesis, it holds about as much water as the aforementioned boat in a Category 5 hurricane of evidence. But let's not stop there. The plot thickens. Or rather, the genetic code gets more specific, and even more inconvenient, for the Sunday school version of history. Let's talk about skin color, a trait that has been the source of so much human drama, yet from a biological standpoint, is a relatively simple adaptation to sunlight. Genetic analysis has shown us something truly fascinating. The lighter skin tones found in Europeans and the lighter skin tones found in East Asians are not the same. They are the result of different genetic mutations, different paths taken to arrive at a similar solution. This is a classic case of convergent evolution. One set of genes like SLC24A5 became prevalent in European populations as they moved into northern latitudes with less intense UV radiation. Meanwhile, completely different genes, like OCA2, were doing the heavy lifting in East Asian populations for the exact same reason. These separate evolutionary journeys took tens of thousands of years to play out. As different groups migrated and adapted to their new environments, the genetic record is crystal clear on this point. These are distinct, independent events separated by vast gulfs of time and geography. Now, let's try to cram this beautiful example of evolution into the Noah's Ark suitcase. If all humanity is descended from Noah's family just 4,500 years ago, where did this convergent evolution happen? The story goes that Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives, repopulated the earth. Different skin-colored genes developed on their own. We would need to believe that after disembarking from the Ark somewhere in the Middle East, their descendants split up almost immediately. One group would have had to sprint towards Europe and another towards East Asia. And in just a few hundred generations and impossibly short time, they would have had to independently develop brand new, complex genetic mutations for lighter skin. This isn't just unlikely. It defies the known mutation rates of the human genome, far more ludicrous and necessary. Assumption for the biblical model to work is that all this genetic potential, the genes for European light skin, the genes for East Asian light skin, the genes for dark African skin, and everything in between was already present in the 8 people on the Ark. So you'd have to imagine Noah's family as a sort of genetic grab bag, a bizarre chromosomal potluck carrying all the world's diversity within them. Perhaps one of the sons' wives carried the European mutation, and another carried the Asian one. And they just happened to go off in the right geographical directions, and their specific genes just happened to become dominant in a few centuries. It's a wild situation that needs crazy smart genetics and a flawless sorting system at the Tower of Babel. Science reveals a slow, messy journey of adaptation over time. The biblical narrative requires a magical, instantaneous deployment of pre-packaged genetic kits. One is a story of nature and time. The other is a story of, well, magic. It simply doesn't allow for the long, independent journeys of convergent evolution that our DNA so clearly spells out. The genetic evidence doesn't just question the biblical account. It utterly and completely refutes it as a literal history of our species. So, there you have it. On one hand, you have the entire edifice of modern science: genetics, archaeology, paleontology, and physics, all hinting at a rich, intricate, an ancient story of humanity that's literally written in our bones and DNA. It's a story of survival, migration, and adaptation over hundreds of thousands of years. But then, there's this story that, ... It basically means you have to ignore all the rules of physics, biology, and genetics just to make the story work. It has a choice between a universe of evidence and a narrative that would need a miracle at every single step to be true. I know which timeline I find more plausible, but hey, who am I to ruin a good story? After all, believing that all of humanity's incredible diversity came from 8 people on a boat 4,500 years ago is certainly. It's all about making a choice. A truly, spectacularly, and scientifically nonsensical choice.